The year is 1620. Amsterdam is the richest city on earth. Dutch merchants rule the seas, their ships returning heavy with silk, spice, and silver. Holland is booming with wealth and power. Across Europe, people look at the Dutch Republic with envy. But soon, a single flower will change everything forever. It arrived from the Ottoman Empire, a flower unlike anything Europe had ever seen. The tulip. Exotic, vibrant, impossibly beautiful. Carolus Clusius planted the first bulbs in Holland, never imagining he had just planted the seed of history's first great financial bubble. Clusius refused to sell the tulips. He guarded them carefully because he knew they were rare. But one night, thieves climbed the walls of his garden and stole the bulbs. That theft marked the beginning of a national obsession that would spread across the entire country. Within years, tulips became the ultimate status symbol. Wealthy nobles displayed them proudly in their homes beside paintings, silverware, and imported luxuries. Owning rare tulips meant power, prestige, and importance. The most famous flower of all was the Semper Augustus, white petals painted with deep crimson flames. Nobody knew its beauty came from a virus slowly killing the bulb itself. Yet people became obsessed with owning it at any cost. The middle class watched the rich profit from tulips and thought, why not us? One merchant spent months of wages on a single bulb, then sold it later for 6 times the price. Suddenly, tulips no longer looked like flowers. They looked like opportunity. Word spread through Holland like wildfire. Ordinary workers heard stories of blacksmiths buying homes and weavers earning fortunes through tulips. Tavern conversations revolved around prices, profits, and rumors of the next big trade. Suddenly, everyone wanted in. Soon, taverns became trading floors. Men traded promises, contracts, and future bulbs that hadn't even grown yet. The tulip market was no longer about flowers. It was about speculation, excitement, and the dream of easy wealth. Prices climbed higher every month. Bulbs once worth a single guilder suddenly sold for hundreds. Traders convinced themselves the rise would never end. Nobody wanted to miss what looked like the easiest money in history. Then came the auction that shocked all of Holland. In 1633, one Semper Augustus bulb sold for 3,000 guilders, more than a craftsman earned in 10 years. The crowd erupted in disbelief and excitement. Tulip Mania had officially begun. By 1636, Holland had completely lost control. Farmers, carpenters, painters, dock workers, everyone traded tulips. The Dutch called it windhandel, trading in wind, buying and selling wealth that existed only on paper. One carpenter in Haarlem traded tulip bulbs for a horse and carriage. His children ran beside it through the streets, laughing with joy. Neighbors stared in amazement. For a brief moment, it felt as if nobody in Holland could ever be poor again. The mania crossed every boundary. Women entered the market too, building trading networks from homes and gardens. Stories of overnight fortunes spread across the country faster than ever before. The Viceroy tulip sold for staggering amounts of wealth. Grain, oxen, pigs, wine, butter, silver cups. Entire fortunes traded for a single bulb. The prices no longer felt connected to reality. Soon traders barely touched real tulips at all. They bought and sold contracts for flowers they didn't own, to buyers who often couldn't even afford them. Holland had built an economy powered almost entirely by belief. One famous story tells of a sailor who mistook a Semper Augustus bulb for an onion and ate it with his lunch. That single mistake destroyed a fortune worth enough to feed an entire crew for months. Not everyone believed the madness could last forever. A few scholars warned that tulips had no real value, and prices survived only because people believed someone else would pay more later. But during the boom, nobody wanted to hear warnings. January 1637, the peak of the mania. Prices exploded upward at terrifying speed. Every conversation in Holland revolved around tulips. Riches seemed guaranteed, yet beneath the excitement, pressure was quietly building. In early February, wealthy merchants gathered for lavish banquets, celebrating their fortunes. They toasted their success while outside, the rest of Holland sank deeper into debt. Nobody realized they were celebrating the final night of the dream. Then came the moment that changed everything. February 3rd, 1637. A routine tulip auction began in Haarlem. The auctioneer called the opening bid, and nobody answered. He lowered the price. Silence again. Men looked nervously at each other. For the first time in years, nobody wanted to buy tulips anymore. By morning, panic spread through every tavern and marketplace in Holland. Buyers had vanished. Fear replaced greed almost instantly. Rumors traveled faster than the crash itself. Everyone rushed to sell at once. Prices didn't slowly decline. The market collapsed immediately, faster than anyone thought possible. Traders who had felt rich only days earlier suddenly faced ruin. Within days, tulip prices crashed by nearly 99%. Bulbs once worth fortunes became almost worthless overnight. Wealth vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Remember the carpenter from Haarlem? Debt collectors arrived and took everything back. The carriage, the horse, his workshop, his future. Families across Holland experienced the same nightmare. Dutch courts became overwhelmed with broken contracts. Buyers refused to pay. Sellers demanded money. Nobody knew how to solve the disaster because nothing like this had ever happened before. The government finally stepped in. Officials allowed many contracts to be canceled for only a fraction of their original value. The financial system survived, but thousands of ordinary people were ruined forever. The taverns that once roared with excitement now sat silent. Tulip bulbs rotted beside canals. Holland stared at itself in disbelief, wondering how flowers had nearly consumed an entire nation. Some wealthy merchants survived the collapse, but ordinary families who borrowed heavily to join the mania lost homes, savings, businesses, and livelihoods. Many never recovered. Historians still debate the true damage caused by Tulip Mania. Some believe it devastated the Dutch economy. Others argue the damage remained limited mostly to speculators. The truth likely lies somewhere in the middle. Remarkably, the Dutch Golden Age survived. Ships still sailed, trade continued. Amsterdam remained one of the richest cities in the world. Holland endured, but the memory of Tulip Mania never disappeared. Soon, satirists mocked tulip traders in pamphlets and drawings, portraying them as fools blinded by greed. But deep down, almost everyone had wanted to join the boom while it lasted. 2 centuries later, scientists finally solved the mystery of the Semper Augustus. The famous crimson flames came from a mosaic virus spread by insects. The world's most desired flower had actually been diseased all along. Economists now describe Tulip Mania as the perfect speculative bubble. Scarcity, greed, social contagion, easy money, and fear of missing out. A formula repeated again and again throughout history. Tulip Mania became the blueprint for every future bubble. Stocks, housing, dot-com companies, crypto, different centuries, same emotions. Human beings change the technology but never change themselves. Today, Tulip Mania is taught in economics classrooms around the world. It revealed that markets are driven not only by value, but by belief itself. Because ultimately, things are worth only what people collectively agree they are worth. And the legendary Semper Augustus? The original flower vanished long ago. Modern recreations now sell for only a few euros. The flower once worth a fortune now costs less than a cup of coffee. Now ask yourself honestly, if you had lived in Holland in 1636, if everyone around you was getting rich, if your neighbors bought houses and carriages with flowers, would you really have stayed away?